Yes. Pin drop silence, please.
Assalamualaikum everybody, and again welcome to Open Chicago Fireside Chat. My name is Amir Chalisa. I'm the president of Open Chicago. And again, thank you for being brave. Thank you for taking the time to come. Thank you for willing to come and listen to our awesome speaker. But more than that, it's such a refreshing thing that we are finally able to do these events in person, right? We've all been locked down for a year and a half now, Khan, somewhere around there. I remember, I don't know how many of you remember that day, but I remember, I think it was March 18th of 2019 when everybody found out that things are going to go bad and everybody's going to shut down. My office happens to be just on the other side of the building. Some of you have been there. This is Moin's office. I'll introduce him in a minute. But it's just amazing that a year and a half later, here we are, hopefully coming back to life as normal, as much as it can be. I don't know if life will ever be completely normal, but we are trying to make the best of it. So we at Open Chicago took the same precautions. We did not want to put people in a room until the vaccination was done. Hopefully, most of you are vaccinated. We tell everybody that it's good to go out now, get some fresh air, network. That's really what Open Chicago has always been about, giving an opportunity for everybody to network, get to know one another. I see a lot of new faces here, obviously a lot of old faces as well. So hopefully we'll give you guys enough time during lunch to network and get to know one another. But today, I'm very privileged that we have one of our own, Siddiqui. I'll introduce him in a minute. And it's just our pleasure that most of you have taken the time to come out. We've got some more people that are coming. Just a little bit about Open. As you know, we are an entrepreneurial organization. We have been around for quite a few years. We generally do an annual event. I'm sure you guys have seen that most organizations are not doing an annual event this year. We decided to do the same. We generally do it in the October-November timeframe, which is actually now. We would have been really, really busy right now planning an event and probably at Ashabai's Hotel, which is where we've done the last couple of years.
I got the pressure already.
There you go. So hopefully we'll plan next March if things are better. We took a poll of a lot of our people and then everybody said that it's just not a good time to do. So in lieu of that, we decided that we'll do smaller events like this one. We're hoping to do another one of these in December, and certainly would hope that all of you are able to join us. A lot of the people here are charter members. Those are paid members who join us in capacity. I think our very newest member, Yasub, if you can just stand up, is Yasub. He just joined us last week, so let's give him a round of applause. Certainly, for those of you that don't know enough about Open and becoming a charter member, please sort out any of us. Haris, our chairman, Asif is here, a bunch of our executive committee members are here, or any other charter member who's here. Find out a little bit more, find out what it takes to become a charter member and why should you become one. Certainly, a lot of information is on our website, so feel free to visit that. With that, I would also like to thank our host, the Hug Group, so Moin Hug and Ibad. So thank you so much for sponsoring this event today. Moin, that only under Moin can a Desi function have Pellegrino water, right? Because all of us generally get tap water. So it's the first one of its kind. So the bar is going to be very high from now. But Moin has sponsored our breakfast today. And certainly after the event, we've got lunch that's being catered in. So feel free to stay with us and have lunch. We probably plan to go for about 45 minutes just for your own planning perspective. I'd also like to introduce our good friend Arshia Wajid. She is the founder and board member of American Muslim Health Professional, AMHP. So Arshia, thanks for joining us today. We partner with a lot of organizations, certainly AMHP and others. We partner with MAPIs, we partner with the Pakistani Physician Society. We do a lot of events with the consulate, with the embassy. And that's one of the good things about Open Chicago, that we have the ability of being able to partner with a lot of organizations out there for the common cause, which is basically serve the community. So as these events come, please feel free to join us. With that, I'd like to introduce first our moderator for the program is Haris Ahmed. Haris Ahmed is the founder and CEO of Pragmatium Consulting Group, a boutique management consulting firm which operates at the intersection of strategy, organization, and leadership. He has over 25 years of experience as an organizational change expert and over 10 years as an executive coach. And he also maintains the position of the chairman of Open Chicago. So thank you, Haris, for moderating our event. And then finally, our keynote speaker today is Khan Siddiqui. Khan Siddiqui is the co-founder of Higgy Inc., CMO and Chief Strategy Officer for Hyperfine. Khan is a senior entrepreneur in the healthcare technology industry. Recently, both Higgy and Hyperfine announced their listing on NASDAQ via SPAC. In this fireside chat today, Khan will share his recent success in the sector and will also discuss the future outlook of healthcare technology sector. And with that, I'll turn it over to you guys. Thank you.
Thank you, Amir. And thank you to Amir and Muzammil who couldn't be here, Faisal and the executive team to put this together. It's not easy to do these events, especially we go out of habit during the 20 months that we've been under the pandemic. So it's great to have all of you here. And apart from the 30 people who, it's great to see all your faces in the room. We are also streaming this live to an audience, including to the broad open global chapters, 20 chapters that are across the US and around the world. So a warm welcome to all of you who are joining us online here to this event. So, you know, what we'll do is, as is our tradition here in such talks, we want it to be more participant driven. And many of you have had the opportunity of knowing Khan. I've had the privilege of knowing Khan for probably a decade or so, not more. I lose track of time. And you know, last week, I don't know how many of you were able to join the Cup Shop talk. I don't know if the Open folks are familiar with this. So every 3 or 4 weeks, Open does this thing that's called Cup Shop, where we get speakers. So the speaker last time was Dr. Mahmood Khan, who you may recall was our keynote speaker 2 years ago when we hosted our last physical event at the Great Embassy Suites of Mr. Ashraf Lakhani. And he spoke about the importance of being intellectual nomads. And it's a term that has been coined and it gets used. And what it means is that you're like a nomad who's traveling from different areas to different areas. Right? And some people call it sort of, you know, renewal and Renaissance man, but I like this term intellectual nomad. And when I was thinking about our talk here this morning, I cannot think of anyone who embodies it better than our friend Khan. He was trained as a physician at the Great Institute of the Aga Khan University in Karachi. Then came out and trained himself and went through great institutions to become a very renowned and well-known radiologist, but that wasn't good enough for him, right? There was an itch in him that made him say, you know what, there's got to be a little bit more. So that took him to the world of technology, to the world of AI, and looking at how enhanced intelligence can assist his fellow radiologists to read reports. But that wasn't enough for him. So he continued to refine on that intersection of technology and medical delivery. And I let him walk through this, but I think that's one of the takeaways that in our lives, and we've seen such tremendous change, that if we don't step into areas that may not be of a comfort level to us, we stagnate as individuals, regardless of the success that we have. And I think that's what you notice, that people who are able to transcend different domain spaces. When I speak to Khan today about the world of raising capital and things, I mean, folks who are in finance would be stunned by the things that he is experiencing. So all new stuff to him. So anyway, with that said, I'd like to ask Khan to maybe just briefly, because I want to really open this up, maybe if you could, in about 5 minutes or so, talk about the journey. That sort of, you can do it in a meta way. I won't hold you to how you want to speak to it. But as you sit back and reflect on your own journey, highlight some of the key aspects, please.
Thanks, Amir. Assalamu alaikum, everybody. I'm really humbled to be here. Like, not sure if I deserve to be up here talking. There are a lot of people here who've done a lot more good things, but many things I can share about what I've learned and gone through the process. More than happy to do that. A lot of you already know. It's very easy to get hold of me, and I never say no. And always give feedback. So I really, really am, humbled that you guys are recognizing, and I'm sitting up here. So my journey, like, it's so funny that everybody asks me that. It's one of the most common things people ask, like how did it happen? And I'll give you and then a lot of my friends also kind of evaluate like what condoms, you talk about the intellectual nomad, which gives you the positive spin. One of my best friends calls me high functioning ADHD. The cognitive way of doing stuff, like don't stay on one thing and keep doing it. So it's kind of a range of where things are. Journey was never planned, and I've been, mashallah, lucky and have the right mentors and right opportunities, the right time that I've taken, and that have shaped my journey where it is. And so I think the story, I'll probably, obviously, both my parents were physicians. They, like, just to give you my mom's history, grew up in a village in Sindh. First time went to school in Hyderabad. First exposure was high school. Of a city was high school, right? She went through that.
I can ask you to speak up a little bit so we can carry through on that.
Yeah. So she went through one of the first persons in the entire family to go to college. First woman, female to go into person and female in the 50s or 60s go to med school. And then first one to go abroad and trained and became a gynecologist and moved back to Hyderabad, right? So, so you have a and my dad had the same story. He grew up in Shikarpur, Sindh, and then became a successful great surgeon, and then he changed his career to radiation therapy, and then changed again to radiologist. So I had two of these very amazing role models as I was growing up, and they were always intellectually curious or nomads. We're always learning new things. First ultrasound in Pakistan was taught by my dad, right? So him going and learning, doing that stuff. And then one of the first laparoscopic obstetric gynae surgeries was done by my mom, right? So she went and learned new things. So I was constantly seeing, as I was young, two role models that I had that were constantly in this, innovating themselves, learning, doing new things. So, that was kind of my upbringing, like just be curious, keep learning, and their intellectual. I mean, I'll tell you that this is my perfect example of, how they were inspiring and curious. I'm in 6th grade. My dad's gone for some conference somewhere, comes back, and there's a game console, he says, like, for you. And I'm all excited, this is going to be a Atari or something. The Atari had just come out that year. And I was so excited, opened up, and it was something called a ZX Spectrum. So like, what is this? It was a PC. And he thought he was bringing a game console, right? So here's a computer, one of the first personal computers that literally, when it came out, like a few months after it even came out to anybody else, I have it and I didn't know what to do with it. So I would understand what it was. I would learn in 6th grade in Hyderabad, Sindh, how to code in it, because there was nobody who can teach you this stuff in 1984, 83,
right? Yeah,
right. So I had to self-teach. So learn how to build my first game by reading a book on how to code, how to create games, and the first game was Hangman, right? I mean, and Pong and things like that. So that's how my journey kind of starts, and that has become the common.
People are dating themselves. Those who are getting the references, and others are saying, "What is he even talking about?"
To talk about the Atari game.
So I'll tell you how old that Spectrum was pre-Commodore, right? It's how old that thing was. And this is like MS-DOS had just come out, right? This is the Gates is doing all this stuff right now, and this is happening at the same time. It's that old stuff. So that was kind of how the intellectual curiosity was ingrained in me as I was growing up, and I think that created the foundation of all the things that happened later. Obviously, wasn't sure what I wanted to do, everybody thought I would go into computer science just because, by the time I was in high school, I had built a whole exam management system that Maharashtra University, Senior University, and a couple of the university were using it. And everybody thought like that's what he's going to do. And I just didn't feel. And in hindsight, I'll go back retrospectively and I reflect like why have I done things? Like what's my internal why?
Apart from the ADHD, right?
Apart from yeah. So if I go back and look at any things I've done has been because somebody that I love has been impacted by something, and at the same time that change has created some social impact. So I couldn't think at that time how would all this computer science stuff is going to help me make us. I mean, in hindsight, obviously it has huge impact. But at that time, as a teenager, couldn't think of it. But it was very easy to see how my parents were making a difference in the community. So thought medicine is the right way to go because that's what I want to do. And the other thing was that I'm always up for challenge. I'm very competitive. So everybody on my friends who wanted to go to medicine were applying for on university. So like, now that's a challenge that you have to figure out. So that was it. I mean, I didn't go anywhere else. Just applied for and got in.
There was no safe school at you?
No safe school. Probably was go back to engineering or something.
Oh boy.
So I was not interested in doing anything else. And in Aachen, it was a shock in multiple ways. So school was easy kind of because you did a little bit studying and you were always in the top 3, and that's how I kind of sailed through school. And here I come in, somebody who's always been in the top 3 in school, and the first exam you fail. And I've never failed before. And I've flunked first year and off, like just couldn't figure out how to study, and had to rethink like what is going on here? Like I can't, why am I not able to, and why am I struggling? And had to almost like when I came back, repeated the year, I sat down and thought through like how will I do this? How will I change my attitude, change my learning styles? Because what I've been doing is not working, and that change. Talking to a lot of mentors, talking to a lot of faculty, really understanding how to do it, that got me involved into data and research, right? So that became my then foundation, how I then drove myself and actually ended up getting honors in some of the classes after I graduated.
So that setback was significant as you think about it.
Yeah, it absolutely was significant. And I'll tell you, like, I'll give credit to Dr. Ahmed, who was one of the physiology professors. He threw me in OBGYN clinic. So he was doing a study on hypertension, orthostatic hypertension. So what happens is in some pregnant female, the autonomic response to controlling blood pressure goes away. And that becomes a sign of a disease called preeclampsia and eclampsia, in which they get seizures long term. And he was looking at, can we detect this preeclampsia earlier on? And one of the early signs is your blood pressure response is not good. Your autonomous, when you lie down and stand up, the blood pressure doesn't get back to normal fast enough. And I hated that. Like this is I'm a back first year medical student, supposed to be studying anatomy, physiology, biology, and all that stuff, not sitting in clinic doing blood pressure in pregnant women, tracing and recording that stuff. But now if you look back, right, that time and really understanding how blood pressure works is what made Higgy possible.
Yes.
Right, the deep knowledge that I had by working on that one project. So I give him huge credit because if he had not made me go do that, and that also helped me learn how to learn around this stuff, right? So that is one aspect of this. The other person in med school that was really influential was there are 2 more people. So in AKU, they were starting Pakistan's first ACLS study, like understanding a patient has cardiac arrest, what is the survival in Pakistan? So in hospital cardiac arrest and how that's survival. They needed people, volunteers, to collect data 24/7, right? So you had to be in the hospital 24/7, carry your pager, and anytime there's cardiac arrest happened, you would go and capture data. So I ended up getting volunteered for that. Did not volunteer myself, and it was insane, right? At that time, survival rate in hospital in Aachen was 2%. So that meant out of 100 cardiac arrests I watched, 98 people died. So you kind of have to go through that traumatic experience and learning, so the passion towards doing something in cardiac kind of started like, this is not right. Like people are dying at that frequency and what those issues are. So that was another big impact that affected me. When you see, I personally attended 250 cardiac arrests with a 2% survival, right? So that creates impact on you that it's a very different aspect of it. The third was a funny one. So my last year at med school,
Like the game.
no, I didn't plug anymore. Now I was on the right trajectory.
Figured it out.
Yeah. So we used to have community health sciences. Everybody just joke about like easy subject, and you go to Kachiyabadis and do data collection over there. So this time they decided to create. Usually, what happens in final year, you do a big community project. Everybody goes in Kachiyabadis, collects data for something. And in our year, they decided to break our group into our subsection of the group into small groups, into small projects. So the two people I got assigned, there's the three of us. Both of them came and said like, if you want to study for USMLE and we don't want to go to Kachiyabadis and do data collection, let's figure out a project that we don't have to. It's something easy. So, and they knew by now I'm all in research, right? Because I've been doing it for the last 4 years, and they knew I would pick something that'll be really hard and difficult to do. And they were like begging to do something that doesn't require too much work. So I went to Dr. Anwar Merchant, who was one of my mentors at CHS, and it's like, told him the problems, and I have to pick a project that I can do alone because I won't have much support to do it. And but still, they have to be participating in it, but they have to pass too. So he had a crazy idea. He is like, you're the only one of the med students who actually knows how to code and do data and all this stuff, and you're really good at it. Why not do something in the electronic health record? It's like, what does that mean? It's like, is there a way to pull data from the EMR and do some? And I was supposed to do total quality management and CQI project, and one of the things was, you could put economic analysis. So that's what some of the groups were doing. Can you pull economic data from our EMR in Alpha, which was a mainframe, required punch cards to do. It was built on a language called Magic by Meditech. It was a weird version of Java, if you think of it that way.
Pre-version, yeah.
Yeah, pre-version of. So I was like, okay, let me go find out. And when I showed up to the IT department, they were like, what is the doctor doing here, right? Like nobody ever showed up. This is 1994, 5. Like nobody ever showed up talking to do some clinical study using data in that time. So that's what we did. We did a financial analysis of nosocomial infection in the ICUs purely from data mining EMR in 1995, right? So again, just trying to show you how far ahead things were happening. That was the project I got flunked on because the project was done in 2 weeks, right? You pulled the data analysis, it was done. And then we did some chart reviews, validated that we could detect nosocomial infection and what it was. And guess what? Cricket season was happening and World Cup was happening. So I would just sit there. The day everybody would go to Kachiyabadis, the two of them will go study USMLE. I would sit in common room and watch cricket. But the project was done. So everybody found out this guy's just sitting there watching cricket. And anyway, I got an F on that project. But then AKU did revise the credit because apparently after I left AKU, that program was still running. The IT people were upset that I got F on the project because they were really passionate about. This was the first time IT was actually doing something that helped in clinical thing. And then after I had left, they actually detected nosocomial pneumonia before any physician did in the ICU. So then I complained like, yeah, that's the project we got F on, and they redo that grades to get us. The problem with redoing grades is now you explain every time you apply for license, you explain why your grade was changed. So it created more headaches for me than the. But anyway, so again, so AKU moved to US, trained, did my internship at NYU, got sucked into data mining there too, just because it was running mom's database, which was same as what Meditech's things was running. Moved to Geisinger Health System to my radiology residency, sucked into IT again over there. And by this time, I was now starting to hate it, right? I didn't want to do anything to do with it. I loved radiology, loved the clinical. I loved the immediate gratification. And if you think about, and if everybody heard of reward mechanism and all these games that kids play and they get addicted to it, it's because you get immediate reward. Right? Radiology is like a game like that, right? You're seeing something unknown, you're figuring it out and you're making it life, different situations life every single time you look at an image. It's very gratifying, and you get immediate gratification like that. And your dopamine surge happens, and you get, almost get into a zone when you're doing that stuff. And it was very exciting to do. And I wanted to really get deeper into it and do my, I did start with a lot of clinical research in MR at that time, and I got into sequence development to build sequences for pediatric cardiac imaging. I did one of the world's first fetal cardiac MR in utero MR, right? That kind of became my clinical, how well people knew what I was doing. And then, but I would always get pulled into IT, was the only resident on EMR selection committee for Geisinger, who led the PACS selection committee as a radiology resident for the whole health system, which is now pretty big. And was on the Geisinger Health System CEO's advisory council as the only trainee who was on the advisory council for that. So it was kind of crazy that I was getting all this attention from all these people, but I still was a trainee. And then was trying to figure out, what do I do after residency, right? Do I do cardiac imaging? Do I do something else? So I want to do cardiac imaging, but we just had our firstborn, and I didn't want to leave. Faisal was also a radiologist a year behind me. Didn't want to leave her, taking care of a child in Pennsylvania while I'm sitting somewhere outside. And there was nothing in a driving distance where I could do cardiac imaging. So I was like, what do I do? And nothing else was exciting me. And then I remember the program director, secretary told me one day, it's like, listen, I think Faisal also said that, like, all the cardiac stuff that you do, there's 7 people in the world who care about it. And the 10-minute IT committee meeting you go to, and everybody sings your song afterwards, right? So why are you resisting this change? So I don't know, like, what's the career in that? Like, what am I going to do? How I'm going to bill? How are you going to make money in this stuff? Like, what is the trajectory around it? At that time, I got an email from a radiologist asking feedback on some teaching website that they had built. And so, looked at it, and it was like, it used Comic Sans font, and like it was called MedPix, and each letter was different color on the title. I was like, who is this clown? This weird thing. So I wrote like a 7-page email back to him criticizing every single aspect of it. He had signed Jim in his email. So anyway, 2 weeks go by, I get an email back from him, this time with a 12-page response, like every single thing.
You hit a
And
nerve.
this time he put his title in. Title is Dr. Jim Sumnatopoulos, Chairman of Radiology, Uniform Research Hospital, blah, 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 Director of Biomedical Informatics. And I'm freaking out, like, who's this? I'm chairman, I'm trashing him. And I asked around and find out that Dr. Sumnatopoulos runs the Armed Forces Institute of Pathology, and every single radiology resident in there last year has to go through this training. So he's trained 36,000 radiologists. Everybody knows who he is. We're pretty much the most well-known radiologist in the country at that time, and I just trashed his
nice career move.
So I had to recover from it, right? So my question, like, what do I ask intelligently that and recover from this and give the respect back? So I saw this informatics in his title. I was like, what the hell is that thing? So I was like, first apology for doing this. I just wanted to be, honest feedback, blah, blah, blah. And then I asked him, like, what is informatics? And then he replied back and what informatics is. And I was like, yeah, that makes sense. This is, using information to do patient care even bigger level. And so now I wanted to do my training in that. Well, there was no training program. So you search for any informatics training program in 2099, 2000, there was nothing out there.
That's what happens when you create new spaces, right?
Yes, and then I asked my my program secretary goes like sometimes they don't advertise, but they may have internal. I'm sure there are people who are what is the society that is in there? I found out there was a society called Society of Computer Application and Radiology, and they had. So she said, I'm sure they're training people into this. How do these guys all sitting in the society? Like, why don't you start calling people and find out? Just like, all right, fine. So she would force me because she knew I had to make the decision very quickly. Time was ending. There's nothing going to be available soon. So she actually went and found phone numbers for every single person on the board of what used to be called SCAR, and said, like, here's a list. start calling. And I had my, procrastination and don't want to do this, and hesitation, is the right thing move or not. There's a lot of doubt, right? You're trying to do something that nobody else has done before. So I said, okay, who's not going to answer this when I call? Is there somebody who's a chairman or higher that will have an admin's number and not going to directly, answer the phone? So I found chairman of radiology, University of Maryland. I was like, yeah, he's definitely not going to answer. I knew him, I've seen him speak. He put the world's first filmless hospital, right? The first PACS system radiology was installed with them. So I knew he's a very big shot and he's not going to answer the phone. But Jen had done such an awesome job finding me direct numbers for everybody. When I called at lunchtime, he picked up.
Oh, boy.
So it's my first call ever to anybody to talk about informatics, and it's the person I want to speak the last, right? Because I wanted to be prepared, do some practice runs first. So I talked to El. His name is Elliot Siegel. I call him. It's like, my name is Siddiqui. I want to speak to Dr. Siegel. He goes, and it's one word, speaking. And I can hear him type really hard, and he's eating. This is lunchtime, right? So he's eating, and I can hear him munch, and I can hear the typing, and he's typing really, really fast. So, and now I start to sweat, right? Because now I'm not prepared to have the discussion. I was supposed to set up time to talk to him later on. So I will go into this monologue of who I am and why I am, and he stops me like so. Again, one word, and I was like, what's going on? This is getting very stressful. It's like, I was wondering if you had an informatics fellowship. He goes like, no, like this one word, no. And I was like, he's being a dick. Like, what is this? At least, and he's still eating and he's still typing fast, and it was very obvious I'm irritating him. So I was like, okay, let's have some fun. It's like, are you thinking of starting one? And he goes like, no. Immediately, like, no thought process, nothing here. Yes. And then he's like, so okay, fine. Now I'm sure he doesn't remember my name anymore. So it's like, okay, what can I convince you to start one? And he was like, excuse me? I was like, what can I convince you to start a fellowship? He was like, keep speaking. Anyway, he's talked to me for 45 minutes afterwards, stopped typing and stuff. And later I found out he was playing speech chess. Ignoring me. But anyway, he said that, this is a brilliant idea. Somebody should definitely start this. There's a lot of need for it. And but unfortunately, I don't have funding, I don't have faculty, and I'm so busy with other stuff that I won't be able to properly mentor you. And wanted to send me a CV and da. So anyways, like, all right, fine, this is done. I sent him my CV. I talked to the whole board. Nobody had any programs. And again, I was, all right, fine, forget it. And I was going to go to body imaging fellowship as my, not even cardiac that I wanted to do, not even informatics that I maybe thought. So anyway, and again, this is now 3 weeks later, I get a page. And it's like, Dr. Siddiqui, somebody in Dr. Siegel wants to talk to you. It's like, oh, okay, hello. Like, he goes like, hey, Khan, I had dinner with the dean yesterday and I mentioned our discussion and he's really excited about it. So why don't you come to Chicago to meet me? I'm in Pennsylvania, he's in Baltimore, University of Maryland. And Chicago has the largest radiology conference. I'm going to be there and come meet me, and we'll talk more. And he hangs up. And I try to get back. He's like, when, what, RSNA? Like, so I have to look up when RSNA is, where it is, register for it, beg people to let me go because other people were going and I was supposed to cover for them. Long story short, he goes like, great. Look at your CV. It's so impressive. You've done so much work. Why don't you come and start the program? Oh boy. And so, and train others because you already have so much experience in doing this stuff. So my fellowship became actually starting the fellowship program, the first one in the US in informatics, and pretty much I trained 21 guys who went and started there. So at Penn, at MGA, at UCSF, Stanford, they're all my former fellows. And, and that became board. Now there's an informatics board that came out of that. I became the founding chair of the American College of Radiology Informatics Commission. So it became a board level position. And the whole my journey skyrocketed because Elliot took the phone and spoke to me. So when I asked him about later on, like, how can I pay back? Like, you had no idea who this Pakistani guy was who just called you randomly and you took this chance. And he said, like, pay it forward. So that's why I always answer if anybody calls. I never say no.
So can I interrupt for a second? So, there's
I'm sorry, I'm going this random because I think some of these early things had made
a lot of impact later on, and some of them were serendipitous in some sense. But as people are listening to you, there are also lessons there, right? Of diligence, about taking risks, persisting. I mean, you were being an ass initially to the guy, perhaps from his standpoint, but you felt convinced to do that. If you would allow it, because we can, you've taken us a little bit into the journey and some of these key things, but since our time is limited and many folks here may have questions and know of you, so can we switch to some questions and then we can sort of, then you can delve into the story. So anyone who has any questions, please introduce yourself so people can listen to you on the.
Assalamu alaikum, everybody. My name is Ashraf Lakhani, also known as Ash, looking for cash. Anyway, I've known him for a long time, and the mistake I made, I didn't believe him in 4 years ago. He gave me a very good opportunity. And I know you are really analytics, and I thought I would always try to do risk assessment. And I didn't take the time to really listen to you at that time, honestly. I'm admitting it publicly. So if there isn't another opportunity in the similar type, because AI, iCloud, artificial intelligence, robotics, I mean, all kinds of opportunity. Liquidity is quite a bit. So who would you recommend for capital market to raise capital? And if you have an idea, or if anybody has an idea, I'm willing to put some risk capital at risk right now. So that's my main question.
I'll give the answer more on how I think about this, right? So there's some things that are inevitable, right? Things are going to get faster, better, cheaper, and smarter, right? So if that's the thesis somebody's going towards, right? How do you make things that today require big rooms, a lot of capital, equipment, expertise to train, takes a long time to do it. That thing is going to become smaller, faster, cheaper, and better tomorrow, right? So I always think like that. That's where I want to invest, innovate, and do it. How do I get a less expert person to do the same job? How do I think about it? So when you think about opportunities, that's how I look at it. Like, is it inevitable or not? Like my best example is Intuitive Surgical, right? And I was in UC Maryland, and being on the technology side of things, we'd always get involved in. Here comes companies trying to sell a robot.
The Da Vinci man.
And it was, this is 2005, right? They were just starting and they were trying to do cardiac surgery through robotics. And you knew that at that time it wasn't ready. It wasn't going to save time. It was way more costly than surgeon doing it. A lot more complications, but you knew it was inevitable. You knew it's going to happen. You just didn't know when. So all the timings happened, right? So that was just one example of how to think about this stuff, right? So I think that's my general answer like that, right? Not special technology, but as you're looking at opportunities, see who is the one that is bringing it, democratizing it, really democratizing it, making it easier, simpler, faster, cheaper, and better.
So did you go ahead after this idea to really raise the capital like the spec you did with somebody? Is there any opportunity for someone like us to really tap into those kind of like any investment bankers like Goldman Sachs or JP Morgan, anybody that really helped you? How did you go through the journey?
So I think I learned over time raising money multiple times, and it's always hard, right? So I remember when we were doing Series B round for Higgy, we spoke like 88 investors before the first one put money in, right? So, and even in Hyperfine, when I came on board, the first thing I had to do was raise our Series D round. And it was really hard. And they had to do it in the pandemic. And capital markets were freezing up. And it's like, oh, this is not happening. And you can have, I've never used bankers to raise money. I've always done it myself. And
private capital.
I've just not have, again, a lot of people have done really well doing with bankers. I've used people to get introductions and then go after. And I've had Google Ventures that invested in that and Hyperfine. Just to give you an example, Jonathan Rothberg has 8 companies, right? Hyperfine and Butterfly Networks and all these other companies. Google Ventures never invested in any of the companies. So Hyperfine was the first one that they invested in, right? And so it's all about how the credibility you're bringing into the team and how you're setting the vision and how you're showing that where you're going to take the company and actually executing at the same time. And that's what convinced all these big guys to come in. And our PIPE investment, our SPAC is $207 million. PIPE is another $126 million. on top of that, right? So we raised 90 million as a Series D, and then all this other money on top. He did the same thing, right? So we did the same thing in Haiti. I mean, so mashallah, I had very good track record on the stuff, but it is just hard work.
It is hard. And it's funny, as you were saying this, I saw people who have been in the business of raising money, they were nodding along. This is not an easy thing to do. And as the folks on the other side get more sophisticated, they want to hear from subject matter experts and the domain experts. They don't want to necessarily hear from the middlemen on that stuff. So I will switch to my friend Ali Musani, who's got a probably follow-up question in the same space.
Yeah, no, I do. Khan, very impressive story. The question I have for you is, take us to the journey when you came up with the idea for AD. And what phases of that journey did you go through for AD idea, which obviously we'll talk about, but the raising of the first round, and then going from pre-fund round, second round, third round, that'll be very interesting to hear your perspective.
Sure. So my ideological career was very successful, and I'm going to do 30 seconds on this one. I got recruited by Microsoft to come and start their first healthcare AI team in 2007, right? So that was a very hard decision to leave academia 10-year track, fully funded lab, and completely start from scratch. And first few years Microsoft, I felt like imposter. I don't know if you've heard of imposter syndrome. If not, look it up. Like
I live it every day.
I sometimes still live it, but I've learned now that I recognize it, I can see what it is. So, and Microsoft career for me was very successful, right? Did Xbox Connect, all the human recognition for that, did a lot of stuff in Microsoft Azure. So my last year at Microsoft, I was asked to build strategy for consumer health. Like, what will the strategy be for consumer health inside Microsoft? And as you would start thinking about it, this is now 2011, 10, 11 timeframe. And ACA was going to come up, right? Accountable Care Act, all that was happening. You knew things were going to move to value-based care. We just didn't know what the timing is going to be. So like, what are the products that would benefit in a risk-based organization, especially when physicians are taking risk? Like, as a physician, we have no idea. If you have hypertension, right. What is your risk? Yeah. I'm just doing the same medication to you and same advice to you. I'm not optimizing it based on my understanding what it is. And when you look at that, you realize that outcomes are based on what a person does in the daily life more than genetics or practice of medicine. So if you look at it, 60% is socioeconomic behavior. Another 20% is genetics, and 30% genetics, and 10% is practice of medicine, the medication I gave you. It's your behavior and your social influence that other people do around you that make a bigger difference. So Microsoft was a perfect way to do this because you are in person's daily life. You're just part of email, part of this, part of all that stuff. I mean, your calendar that you're using all day long is Outlook, most of people, right? So how can we build a strategy that is encompassing you daily in your daily life or capturing this stuff? And unfortunately, leadership didn't agree to do this stuff. And I was giving a talk October 2011 because they'd already decided not to do this stuff. And somebody asked me, like, how would the social media and how does the consumerism will help drive healthcare? And I gave this vision that healthcare needs to be invisible, that people don't realize they're doing healthcare. It needs to be in the background, it needs to be automatic, and it needs to be in your daily life. That's how we change behavior, and that's how we do this stuff. So some people heard it, and I started getting calls from some folks like, well, where's the company? Who's doing it? What is happening? Why don't you do it? So, and then finally decided, met this guy named Michael Ferro here in Chicago, who just bought Merge Healthcare, the radiology company was sold to IBM for $1 billion. He was trying to convince me to come and be a president at Merge Healthcare. Should have done that too, but
you have to make choices.
But I had to make choices. So I told him, like, that's not what it is, but this is what I want to do. So I know the exact dates, right? This is how some impactful things you remember the exact time, date, where you were, what you were doing. So I am on Eastern Shore at a resort with my family on Christmas Day. And he calls me. So like, what are you doing? Like, I'm having dinner with Mr. Wrigley, the CEO of Wrigley Chewing Gums, and he needs to hear your story. You got to come here right now. I was like, I'm
on Christmas Day.
Yeah, on Christmas Day. I was like, yeah, I'm not coming on Christmas Day. But it's like, no, I'm having dinner with him tonight, tomorrow night, 26th. He's here in Palm Beach. Gotta come. It's like, I gotta from Eastern Shore, Maryland. I gotta drive back, take a plane, and fly to Palm Beach to meet this guy. And then Faiza finally, you have to have a supporting spouse, right? If your spouse doesn't support, you can't do this. She goes like, you got to go do this, and I'll drive the kids home. And so I go on Christmas Day and have dinner with Mr. Wrigley, and we talk about the story, and he absolutely loves it and tells me I'm in for $5 million.
That's how you raise money.
I'll answer my calls on Christmas.
So there's no company, there are no people,
Right.
there's no PowerPoint, there's no nothing, and I have $5 million check. So that was December 26th, and December 30th, I called my president at Microsoft and told him my last day. And
Well, Tom, can you explain that a bit more? On the dinner, as you were talking to Mr. Wrigley, what's the pitch?
pitch was what needs to happen. What needs to happen in healthcare. And his question really was, can you do this? And how will you do this? So remember, that pitch is not about a kiosk. Right? That pitch is about a data platform that's going to provide all this understanding from this wave of wearables coming in, consumers' healthcare is happening, and he will be the forefront, the first company is going to bring all this data in for care providers, for payers, for self-insured employers to understand risk of their population better. So him being a CEO of a chewing gum company with gigantic, thing, so understood immediately that how will they benefit, even just for his employees, and obviously for healthcare also, right? And our idea was maybe we build our own wearable, or we partner with a wearable, bringing it in, type of thing. And my track record that I grew my Microsoft team for like very small team in the healthcare to a very large team when I left. So I had that track record on how to do that stuff, and that's what convinced him to do it, I think.
Mind elaborating more on what was in it for Mr. Wrigley? Was that more of an angel investment, or what exactly was he looking forward to?
I think, so here's my understanding of his real intention, I think it was philanthropy. We built chewing gums and candy that probably contributed to stuff. I'm doing something that could do it. And it's probably going to fail. I mean, this guy's 8 billion, worth 8 billion, right? 5 billion is like 25 cents for you, right?
Contributing to population health risks and all that.
So I think that's what it was. Interesting. More. I don't think he was looking for anything. And that's why, so I thought that's how easy money raising is, right? Like, oh, great, you go talk to some people and they'll write you a check. And then, oh my God, that's not how it happens. So that was the initial journey, and we started building the team. I think it's so important to have the right people. You need to hire people who know how to build. Right? Otherwise, you get stuck. If you don't have the team that can grow and understand scale. Another person I give credit is Paul Johnson. He used to be a neighbor in Maryland. He used to always say, like, don't start an idea until you understand how you're going to scale it. Maybe you're not going to scale it for the first 5 years, but you need to have very clear understanding in your brain how will you scale it. So our first discussion used to be like, okay, fine, this is 2017, and we have 10,000. No, we used to say we have 1,000 of these,
Yes.
our customers, blah, blah, and what does the interest rate look like? And suddenly the developers would go like, ooh, like I can't think small. I got to think all these management stuff and how to do it. So I was very lucky to have people who were the early 4 employees were really that thinking that big scale thing. And we were struggling, like how will we collect all this data from outside of healthcare environment, right? How will we collect behavior data? How will we collect social data? Well, steps is great, but is step going to help? What data do we need? We knew hypertension, diabetes, obesity are the 3 things we need to understand. We need to get weight. Well, Withings was the only weighing scale that was connected, and it was $250 to buy that at that time. There's no other connected weighing scale. We had people input the data manually. We knew how inaccurate that's going to be. Nobody's going to trust that. Blood pressure, nothing really existed other than Withings was the only one. Again, very expensive to get data in it, and we knew that's not going to work. And we couldn't get heart rate from anything that was reliable that consumer would use at home. And Apple Watch is not there. The only device out there is Fitbit that does steps. So how will we collect this data? And one of the interns on the team goes like, what about the blood pressure kiosk? And my reaction was dismissive, as I always am on brilliant ideas, like, oh, those things are inaccurate and never work. And he goes, exactly. And then, right? And then we all looking at each other like, what do you mean? Like, build our own kiosk? Like kiosk, gigantic thing, not a miniature thing. That's where the world is going. He's like, yeah. I mean, he goes like, if you think about it, all these problems you're talking about, you got to go to manage Medicare, right? Medicare Advantage. I mean, these are low-income elderly people. They're not buying watches and Fitbits and things like that. They can't afford them. And Medicaid, same thing. So you need to do something that's free for them. So then we walked down to CVS. So we were in the Aeon Center at that time in a room, and we walked down to CVS down on Michigan, and there's a blood pressure kiosk broken up, sitting there. There are 10 people in line waiting for it. And I talked to every single one of them, talked to the pharmacist. I spent 2 hours in the CVS just talking to people, and realized like these people, all 10 of these people came regularly. So then we did, our next month was spending really understanding this kiosk market. Who are the players? What do they do?
So the data collection and the Kachiyabadi came in handy at this point.
Absolutely came in handy as well, right? So those ideas. So that was the evolution of it. And I've always thought of, I mean, this is my learning from Microsoft, is that I always think about on the both sides of your problem, right? So you're trying to solve problem number one, what is in front of it, what is behind it, and how you innovate and build your moat like that. So when we came on board, so now that we know we're going to do kiosks, this is how we're going to do this, we're going to get a platform for the stuff, and I go, Wrigley sets me up for the first meeting with Walgreens, right? So it's Dr. J and all these big shots in Walgreens, and I'm here's Siddiqui, doctor, never been to retail before, is now going to talk to them how they're going to do digital health and retail. And it was so embarrassing. I didn't know what CPG meant.
Oh my gosh.
Right, didn't know anything like that. So, and I give this gigantic vision. And then sent it to CVS. And at that time, we were discussing with CVS on, replacing their kiosk. A company called Life Clinic that had the 800-pound gorilla that actually gone bankrupt. We bought all the assets from the bank, from them to jumpstart us, bought all the contracts. So now I had contracts with all these retailers. It was all about just replace the machine, not redo the contract. And we were in the process of doing it with CVS, not the procurement, but I wanted to go talk to the CEO and pitch this big idea. And the procurement guy calls me later on, is like, Doc, you just ruined your chances. Like, what happened? He goes like, the blood kiosk has been there from the 80s. The CVS thinks of it the same way they think of it, Clorox for clean floors. It's my decision. What do I choose? But by doing this big vision, you've now made it a C-level decision. It's out of my hands now. And Walgreens and CVS both didn't happen. So I went back, like, okay, fine. We are ruining ourselves. There already is a person in retail that is buying these things as if they are just small meat and potato things they're buying. And that's how we need to go pitch. Otherwise, so we became a kiosk company only immediately, and got Publix, got Wakefern, got some of these, and we just focused on, white glove delivery. I wanted to make sure they sing our songs. So we did Wakefern first. They were really impressed how we delivered it, very hands-on, everybody is on site. And my team would say, we can't scale like this. If you do Rite Aid, which has 4,000 kiosks, how would we do this if you're going physically doing every single one of them ourselves? So it's like, listen, right now it's only 250. We can do it ourselves, but let's think about how would we automate this process and how we do big one. Public was 1,000 kiosks. We made sure Public gets delivered on time and they sing our songs. And when we delivered Publix in 3 months, 1,000 kiosks. And the Publix hired a pharmacy, gets up in a National Center store chain and says, one of the best implementations of any technology they've ever done in pharmacy, right? Next, you get a call from Rite Aid. Rite Aid was 4,000 kiosks, all North America, including Alaska and Hawaii and Puerto Rico.
That succeeds like success, right?
Right. So you have to really logistical. I mean, you learn logistics, you learn supply chain, you learn. I've never done manufacturing before, right? I had to learn all that stuff from scratch to understand how to do that. You don't have the right people, the right mentors to help you through that process. You can't invent that. And every 6 months, you relook our business model. We relook at how we're thinking about stuff. So we had to become an advertising business model initially because that's how all the kiosks were doing, and they were already market there. We knew we won't be able to scale it, but we needed the footprint to do our real vision of data. So we went in that direction. And every 6 months we would reevaluate. Then we got into this whole game mechanics and consumer engagement, patient engagement aspect of it, improved that, went to self-insured employers, got that market, built products for that, built product for pharmacy, of data analytics products around the scripts analytics integration into pharmacy systems, then got into provider being a front-end patient capture solution for providers. Then once we had the nationwide footprint, we bought a company called Stay Healthy. We bought with which other companies had the 10,000 kiosk footprint. Then we said, all right, let's get back to what we initially decided to do and go for these value-based care scenarios. So Centene, Blue Cross Blue Shield was the first customer, Centene was the second customer on the payer side of things, and then ACO started to come in. Then I think the best one was one of the health system in Chicago was taking a risk-based contracts for hypertension population. And they were trying to think about building clinics all around Chicago to do hypertension. Their capacity was 14,000 patients a year they could see, but the risk contracts were 100,000 patients. So how do you do this? And so we went and pitched like, don't build clinics. We built a couple of clinics, but let's do this all virtually through Higi because we had a 300 plus kiosk in Chicagoland area and we can manage it. So we did this and they paid us what, $600,000 annually, which was like amazing for us, recurring revenue contract. They made 32 million in the first year in bonus payments of managing hypertension. And it was like, whoa, we're leaving too much on the table. So then he decided to become a provider itself. And that's why Babylon Health came in. So we kind of grew from a kiosk-only advertising model to this risk-based model and becoming a provider ourselves.
I was speaking to Han earlier, we focus on these innovations and the scaling that he speaks about. And it's not easy, right, to go and those of you who are in the business of taking an idea to market and then growing it comes at a tremendous sacrifice. And I was asking him, because whenever I call him, he's either coming from a investor pitch or getting ready for an investor pitch. Those are the things that I just know about him. And I texted him a couple of days ago to connect for this. He was in New York. So I don't think many people understand that this comes at a tremendous sacrifice, right? So I want you to speak to that a little bit because we always glorify the, going public and having all the outputs that look at. What's the other side of that, please?
Yeah, I think that the other side is the most important side of it, right? You're not on this journey to yourself, the whole family is on this journey. Where the kids, they're not just responsible, the kids, everybody. I'll tell you a personal story, like how impactful this is. So I'm in Maryland, live on a 3-acre property, 6,000 plus square feet house, done it up, big shot executive at Microsoft. I'm gonna start this Higi thing. And I knew I had to downscale. So we come and move to a townhome. And we're driving with my son, Munir, and some of seen them open, and he goes like, Baba, have you become poor? I mean, that hurt. That hurt. I had to explain to him like how he could go back and play in 3-acre lot and do all these things, and now he's in a townhome. There's nothing there. It's just 2 rooms, 3 rooms. For him, it was like something major has happened, and we were making different decisions. Where we're eating, we're doing more stuff at home, not just there's no party happening every single weekend. What was happening in Maryland, so it was very dramatic for them. And for a 5th grader to understand their stuff, it's really hard, right? So you have to pay attention to those things. I mean, I don't think I've done good enough job at that. I'm trying. I'm still constantly improving it. But if you don't have your spouse's support, doesn't mean it's all smooth sailing. No, it's ups and downs, and you have to, but you have to be open and upfront, right? So when the time is going to get crazy, like right now it's crazy. So I communicate to them, like, next few months I will hardly be around. So that means your spouse has to take care of not just her own job. I mean, she's a radiologist, full-time practicing, right? Deal with kids going to school, their food, anything goes wrong, air conditioning's not working. Well, I'm not here to deal with it, right? She has to be there. Laundry needs to be picked up. All that stuff's happening. Groceries need to get done. I'm not around, right? So, but then when you are around, you need to just shut everything down and be able to do this stuff. And then you need to make sure your other family, the team, knows that this is shutdown time. And then Muzamil called me for this, and I was like, dude, I'm gonna be in New York on Friday. I'm gonna fly in Friday. I'm gonna be home Saturday. And Sunday, I'm flying back to San Francisco. And the day I'm here, you want me to do this? And you know, I'm like,
Now you're making us feel bad.
So he kept asking me. I kept telling me like, can you do it earlier? Because I knew if I was going to be, she had a call last week, right? So I knew she'd wake up late, so I could come like let's do it 8 a.m. So that then by the time they wake up, I'm back home, right? Type of thing, right? And he was like, nobody will show up at 8 a.m.
But I think what you said is, as difficult as this is, and you're gone a lot, but you have found ways. You text them about your every move, right?
Yeah. So when I leave, I'm leaving. I say bye to everybody. I get to the airport. I say arrive at the airport. I go to security. I say I go to security. I'm at the gate. I'm in the plane, boarded, taking off, landed in Uber at the hotel.
Yeah.
Like both of my sons and friends, I get this message constant. They know exactly where I am, what I'm doing. So I try to keep them engaged in what is happening.
So we have time for one or
Real
two
quick,
questions.
just on the same subject, if you don't mind, could you be more, I know, I understand this family, domestic, you give a lot of sacrifice, give and take, and make sure you're really connecting and engaging with your family internally. What about the life that you go into New York, making trips, pitching for investments and all that? Could you give us some specific examples that the audience can learn, that what kind of things that you struggle and you overcome the challenges on that particular?
Yeah, I'm not sure how to answer that, but obviously the biggest challenges really are staying healthy when you're doing this stuff, right? Yeah, how do you make sure you're sleeping well? How do you make sure you're eating well in health, right? It's not happening. And that's gained so much weight in the just last year or so with advertising stuff, just because travel is so much and those are things that are hard to do. But you have to make an effort. You have to make an effort to make sure you're taking care of yourself also.
Got a few more. Arshia, and then
So has the pandemic, has that created more opportunities for you and the companies, or has that created some limitation and challenges?
Yeah, so absolutely both, I would say, and opportunities and challenges. But that's where a good team and that is always doing what we do something called pre-mortem, right? We play like it's 5 years ahead and we're shutting down and we fail. And why did we fail? So we do this like all the time. So when pandemic hit, I was, again, timing lucky, right? I was at the Biogen conference in Boston where the first thing happened, right? So I was in quarantine on March 6th, 2 weeks before everybody else. And I'm on the board of a startup in China that went to quarantine, late December, early January.
Right.
And so I had this one person who's gone through in China and what they needed to get through it. And we had times we said, okay, fine, this is going to happen. It's coming. Let's start planning exercise. We brought in consultants to help us think through how the pandemic could go. So a bunch of infectious disease guys, these other planning guys, we brought in a consulting firm to help us through the managing, how to think, how supply chain is going to happen, employee work is going to happen, what need to change. So we did this March 14th before the lockdown happened. And the advice we got from our China thing was that PPE is going to disappear. You won't need to get masks and things like that because they had huge shortage starting happen. So start arranging for that. Remote work needs to happen. Here were the issues they ran into where they decided to move remote. So like everything needs to be in the cloud right now. Was any server locally doesn't have to be. Getting our supply chain people on board, order parts for a whole year, assuming that's going to lock down. So we did this all before March 18th the lockdown started, right? So that was the opportunity, just preparedness and doing those exercises and building that. It's what I call muscle memory, right? It's really hard to do. It's like broccoli and exercise. Some people like it, some people hate it, but you have to do, it's the right thing. And you have to build those processes in your team that become muscle memory and this just happen automatically. And that's kind of what has helped us go through this process. The biggest challenge was getting regulatory approval during the pandemic where we couldn't go to any conference and show our device. So you're putting an MRI scanner, nobody ever buys MRI scanner without seeing it. So how do you now sell something? So the first thing I did was like, okay, fine, is there anything else in the market that you would buy online? Well, cars were coming up, like there's Carvana out there, Vroom and Tesla's like, and I was kind of delaying buying my car, didn't want to do it. So let me just go through this process of learning what it is. And I found a very interesting process and how they did, the car industry was innovating the stuff. So we started learning from this And one of the team members came with the idea of a demo at your door, like we can drive our scanner around and do demos on the parking lot for hospitals, so we don't have to go in there, right? So it would take time to build a truck, put this in and do all the logistics, all the stuff. So I mean, it was challenging. I mean, COVID really hit us hard from a commercial point of view, not as much as manufacturing and other things. We actually were ready for the product 6 months ahead of schedule because everybody just focused on it and got it done.
So folks, I think we have many questions. So you've agreed to stick through lunch. Can we stop because I'm getting signals from our hosts here, stop the formal event and continue this over grabbing a sandwich? Is that acceptable to you all?
Yes.
I mean, you would, we could probably sit and listen to the journey and what it means to us, right? So I think as all of us listen to this stuff, like, okay, what do I take away from this that applies to me, my journey at this point in my life? And there's tons, right? So I get a headache every time I speak to Fun because it's like, oh my gosh, I've made this mistake and that mistake, and I should really be thinking about this. I love the pre-mortem conversation about sort of expecting where to go, not after the fact, but before the fact. So why don't we conclude the formal session now, if that's okay, and just join me in thanking Khan for making time, especially when you spoke about the work-family balance that he's doing. But I think he's been just a wonderful community member for us within Open and for the Chicago community. And he doesn't need to come and do this at this point. You can clearly see this. And I'll end with this. We get lots of speakers, and some of them just with success gain a modicum of arrogance within them. I have not noticed it with this man. I've known him for a while, as I said, and he's just as humble as he gets. And that's what I really appreciate about you. We know you're smart, but it's the other aspects that really endear us to you. So please join me in thanking Khan for this.
Just think one last thing. I think that's something that I've noticed is humans are linear thinkers, right? But we are at a time where everything's happening exponentially.
Yeah.
So we don't think exponentially. We get stuck because when whatever part of journey you are, that part is always linear, right? But if you look at the longer horizon, it's always exponential. So you have to deliberately force yourself to think in that manner. So for example, I've learned a long time ago that if you look at outcomes when you're measuring your progress in your business, you will only improve, let's say 50% improvement, 100% improvement in your revenue. But if you do the same thing on the process, right? Your process of development, process of commercialization, process of things, 50% improvement in that is actually exponential increase in outcomes. So that's something that a lot of people don't understand, don't pay attention to. And I think one of the things I've learned over the years is that it's really important to because it doesn't come naturally. It is not, our brains are not designed evolutionary to think exponentially. And you have to deliberately think about that, and then you will see a lot more things happening.
Well, thank you for that insight. And thank you to all of those who are joining us remotely for this. I hope that you enjoyed this. You can log off because I think we'll move into the more of the physical aspect. Back to you, Ahmed.
And I'm on LinkedIn, Twitter. Anybody ever wants anything, you can always reach out.
He is responsive, maybe to a fault.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's one of the things that you guys will notice, that people like Khan, Haris, and others in the room who've got incredible journeys that they're willing to share. And that's kind of what Open Chicago is all about, and certainly Open Global, that these are people that you get access to. These are real life stories. This is not a Wall Street Journal article. This is not on LinkedIn. It's there, but these are real people that you can touch and feel. And Khan is absolutely right that he is very approachable. He does not have a question that he won't answer. He doesn't have anything hidden. Certainly a polished man, certainly somebody that is a close friend of many of us here. And we always cherish. And the story is continuing on. It's not the end. as we say, this is the beginning, right? Because I'm sure if we did the same session a year from now, 5 years from now, the story will be even bigger and.
So he'll be able to share more. Right
Able to
now, he
share
is-
more.
He is under some restrictions as to what he can say and not say. Yes,
Uh, Dr. Ryan, originator, I've been here almost 50 years. I'm proud to have that. Student. From both of your parents. I knew them before they got that.
So you know what kind of role models they were going to have.
Yes.
Sure.
And one of the things, there was a trend for all our teachers